Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Sunday Times is reporting on the Floyd Shivambu and Julius Malema split. And of course, it is the biggest story of the week. But what's very interesting in all of this is that this is the first time that the EFF has been on the cover page of the Sunday Times in 2024. Let me repeat that in case you missed it. This is the first time that the EFF has been on the cover page of the Sunday Times in 2024. 2024 was not just any year. It was an election year. It was a hotly contested election year. And in all of the weeks that the Sunday Times has been publishing stories, they have not put the EFF on the cover up until now. I find that to be very interesting. Just let me go through the headlines for you just so you see. Here are the January headlines. And I'm going to put the graphic up so you can try to keep up with it as well. January headlines: South Africa braced for Israel fallout. Bring it on, ANC story. Signs of sweet success. This was a matric result story. And then South Africa keeps up the heat on Israel. So January was Israel, ANC, matrics. February, ANC sends out a signal of distress to Mbeki, SOS to Mbeki. Then it was the next week, sex, drugs, and poison, the Thabo Bester story. Then it was the Democratic Alliance wants ANC leaders arrested. Right now they are working with them in a coalition. Story for another day. Then it was ANC show of force. Those were the February headlines. March, what are the headlines? I gave bags of money to the minister. This was a story about Mapisa Ngagula. Then how the ANC chose its members of parliament to put on the lists for the election. No wholesale sell-off, but we need private capital. This story was a South African Airlines deal. Then it was the NPA wants to humiliate me. Another discussion around Mapisa Ngagula. So we've got two stories on Mapisa, no stories about the EFF in the first quarter of the year. Then we go to April. How did she get out alive? Sole survivor story. This was about the bus accident when people were going to Moria, that incident. So it was somebody survived, sole survivor. How did she get out alive? That was the story. Then it was Paul Mashatile's big water plan. Then it was millions blown on Death Trap Road. Then it was Zuma purge rocks the MK party. This story was not even really true in the nature of the reporting because MK was not really, rocked by the departure of Jabulani Khumalo and any of the other people who were alleged to be concerned about Zuma's moves, etc. So that was the end of April. We're done with April. May, election month. What do we get from the front page? Right? And what is covered on the front page is actually quite interesting in an election month. That's the game time. Right? Oil giant Shell to exit South Africa. That's the first story in May. Miracle rescue. George building collapse. Second story. Then you go to Cyril Ramaphosa open to more national health insurance talks. Third story. Then the week of election, let the people decide. This was a pro-Ramaphosa article on the week of the election. All right, so we're done with May. What happens in June? June, beaten ANC pushes for GNU. Notice the week before, they had put Ramaphosa as the face, but once they've lost the election, now they got to put Kwete. But that's also a story for another day. Do you see, they didn't want Ramaphosa to be the face of the defeat. Anyway, GNU, second story, GNU in June, second lead story in June. GNU best option to save the economy. Then the third story in June, new cabinet may be bigger. Here they're trying to manage expectations from all of the people who thought the cabinet would shrink, etc., etc. Fourth article in June, ANC and DA clash over cabinet positions. Obviously, these are the lead stories on the front page. June. We've crossed now first half of the year. First 6 months, nothing that the EFF did, according to the Sunday Times, was worthy of front page status. Okay. July, it's a done deal. GNU story. SA nuclear plan hots up. It's a story about electricity and nuclear that apparently is now gone all to the side. I'm going to do a separate video on that soon. Watch out for it. How I blew it. VBS Matodzi story. And then the last story in July, Mashatile says, "You are not the boss." Right? Sorry, not Mashatile. Sorry. Gwede Mantashe says, "You are not the boss," to Helen Zille. That was the last story of July. Then August. We have another Helen Zille story. It's a lot depends on Cyril Ramaphosa staying. This is Helen Zille's interview with Mike Seluma for Sunday Times. Then you have cancer patients scream wait for death. Second lead story of August. And then finally, behind the big fallout. Think about that. What does it mean? What does this type of coverage imply or mean to you? Right. Let me make some comments just on what my perception is of Sunday Times coverage. It seems to me that Sunday Times is a very friendly or soft on Ramaphosa publication. They even defended him when the Section 89 panel report came out, saying that Mandela also did things that were unlawful. You remember that time? I don't know. Just before ANC conference, their legal reporter came out and said, "Listen, guys, other people have done things which are dodgy." And then the next week, there was another article saying, "No, the report is bad in law." And it's never been explained why the report was bad in law. Because if you recall, the legal review of the Section 89 report was withdrawn by President Ramaphosa. So already Sunday Times knew that it's bad in law. Okay. Right. So I also think that it's clear that they've reported mostly negatively on the MK and ignored the EFF during the first 7 months of the year. Right? This is the Sunday Times in terms of lead stories. What does that mean for absorbing their lead story today? Number one, I would take the story with a pinch of salt. I would take it with a pinch of salt because it may be predominantly coming from the ANC camp with reasons to try to weaken EFF and or MK. You never know, but I would take it with a pinch of salt simply because this publication has not taken the EFF seriously up until the point where the EFF is having a serious rift. And they've not seem to care about the prospects and future of the EFF enough to give them a lead story. But now that it seems as if there's a big rift in the EFF, they are now seeming to, put salt in the wound to pull apart the entity. So I would take it as with a pinch of salt. As an EFF supporter or member, I would ask myself, why would this newspaper, which has never covered us, when we held our manifesto launch on the front page, I'm talking about covering on the front page, or at other times of the year as a main story, only cover us now? I would ask, is this to deepen divisions in our organizations? Is this to improve the strength of the DA and ANC coalition, which has had one of the members, which is the DA, state that the EFF is its biggest enemy? John Steenhuisen has said that. Helen Zille has said that. So if I'm reading this outside of the ANC camp, the DA camp, I would really take a lot of this with a pinch of salt, because is it really in their interest? And I would ask about, unnamed sources and whether or not that reporting can be credible. Is this coming from Floyd? Is this coming from ANC guys? Who are these? They say they spoke to MK people, ANC people, as well as EFF inside sources. So, okay. Anyway, let me now comment on this particular story, the actual reporting and what has been reported here as their inside scoop about why Floyd left. Number one, I think that Floyd was played and tricked by the ANC. Why do I say that? He places too much trust in what they told him. Let's look at what he was told and what he believes. The first thing that he believes is that he was going to be Minister of Finance. There is nothing that was much further from being likely than that outcome. That the ANC under Ramaphosa was going to make Floyd Shivambu the Minister of Finance. It was not going to happen. Let's unpack. Floyd Shivambu has been painted as a VBS looter, a socialist communist, by business publications, News 24, various other publications, right? Market-friendly publications, right? The markets were never going to allow for him to become the Minister of Finance. They were never going to let a Marxist, Leninist, Fanonist handle the money. There was 0% chance that he was going to get the job under Ramaphosa. The whole time we kept hearing about the Rand, and the Rand was concerned about somebody like Floyd Shivambu being able to ascend to a critical position such as Minister of Finance. The Rand was moving, basically looking at Floyd Shivambu. Every time they would woo, Floyd woo, Floyd woo. Anytime it seemed as if there's any space whatsoever for Floyd Shivambu or the EFF or anybody to ascend to any position where they were going to be touching the money, there was a woo. Listen, the reason is because the ideas that Floyd Shivambu has spoken about around a state bank, around changing the mandate of the Reserve Bank, are particularly ideas that the markets are concerned about because they worry that it will create a crisis such as that which happened in Zimbabwe. They worry that changing inflation targeting will weaken the Rand to such an extent that the currency will go into a free fall. There'll be hyperinflation. They worry that nationalization of mines and banks is exactly the type of policies that led to Zimbabwe becoming the country that it is right now, an economic failure, a pariah in the global community of nations, a country which is experiencing and has experienced levels of inflation which are mind-boggling, to the point where they had $1 trillion note which could buy a loaf of bread only. These are the kind of things that worry the markets. So there was never going to be space for Floyd Shivambu to get there. Listen, it's not even about the VBS corruption so much, because Enoch Godongwana himself has faced accusations of corruption. Him and his wife are accused of having made 100 million rands just whoop from the atmosphere, which was money that belonged to a union. This is the reason why he left politics in the first place. But the markets have never blinked about that allegation or allegations around anything that happened in a massage parlor with a young lady. They seem to be oblivious. They are Stevie Wonder to anything that Enoch Godongwana has been accused of. But they were not Stevie Wonder to Floyd Shivambu. They were Vision 2020. They had microscopes. They had every lens equipment that you could think of to properly scrutinize. They were 100x, zooming in to anything that Floyd Shivambu could be accused of doing. Even his farts, I'm sure, were being called Marxist-Leninist farts. I joke, but I'm actually quite earnest in what I'm saying, which is to say there was a 0% chance that he was going to get that job under President Cyril Ramaphosa. Cyril Ramaphosa is a capitalist. He's a neoliberal. He's not going to allow a guy to come in who wants to... Come on, guys, what are we doing here? So if he believes it, then you are strict. Or if this is the version that is being put out by Sunday Times and he doesn't believe it, then it means that it's not a true thing. It's one of the two, right? We must be quite aware of that, right? It also seems that Floyd Shivambu believed from this reporting that the EFF were going to be in the GNU. Come on, guys, what are we doing here? This is also something that was clearly not going to happen. Firstly, we know what was planned by Helen Zille and the DA from 2019. There's audio recordings. There are audio recordings of Helen Zille saying 20% is a strong percentage. ANC is going to go down. We're going to go in there. We're going to block the EFF. EFF's our biggest enemy. This is what's going to happen. We know that the Rand, secondly, was shaking anytime it looked as if this thing is not going the direction that they want. The Rand would whoop. You saw it. Those Cadillacs in America, what do they call them? Do they call them a 6.4 or whatever? I don't know what they call them. But the ones that do that thing. What is that thing called? Where they do that thing, every time that there was, and Helen Zille even spoke about this in that interview that she had, where she said, listen, the Rand was moving in alignment with us. Where was the EFF going to emerge in the GNU? That is something that was against Ramaphosa's interests, because he recognizes that having EFF or any party that has been opposed to him makes him vulnerable. He wants a party that needs him in the GNU as much as he needs them, a party that can protect him. And we've seen Helen Zille said, look, we're here to protect Ramaphosa. We're here to prevent him. It all depends on him staying. This is what they've said. Even John Steenhuisen has said that he no longer feels the same way that he used to feel about Palapal. He was concerned. He said, when he gave that original speech, that no, this sounds like it's a mafia activity. It sounds like money laundering, all of that. Now he's like, well, VBS is worse. How are they going to join the GNU? Come on. What are we talking about here? The whole GNU package, right? This GNU, which is not a real GNU. I'm just using the name here for convenience purposes, but it's really a DA-ANC coalition. The whole coalition package was sold to the public, to the markets, as the only way to keep the EFF and MK out of power. That's what they said. That this is the only way to block MK and EFF from being anywhere close to power in KwaZulu-Natal, in cabinet. This was the whole reason. This is why the ANC and DA were able to go to their bases where they have ideological opposition, where the DA was saying that ANC people are criminals, they must be arrested. But they said, look, we're going to go into this relationship because we're trying to block MK and we're trying to block EFF from getting into power. So why would Floyd think that he had space? Look, obviously you're negotiating, you're smelling power, you want power, you think power is close by. But pragmatically, realistically, it's not going to happen. It was never going to happen. It was never going to happen. Now, the third thing I want to talk about, or rather the fourth thing actually, about this, can Floyd Shivambu become the president of the MK party? If this is what he was promised. I don't think that's likely to happen. I'm going to tell you why. Number one, Floyd has a big scandal facing him. This VBS scandal is not going away, right? And the Matodzi affidavit is going to be something that I think will follow him, especially him, because he, even in the reporting of Polly Van Wyk, she was talking about him and Brian Shivambu. They're the ones who set up a lot of the instruments, etc., etc. They're the ones who are collecting all of that money. This scandal is following him, and it's not going away. You can see, if you make Floyd, if you're an MK member, you make Floyd president of the party, you then become the VBS party. Why would MK take such a kind of a reputational risk? Why would they take it when they have their own reputational risk? They've got people like Lucky Montana there. They've got other people who have been accused of a variety of things. Why would they take this on and give it to a presidential candidate? Secondly, Floyd Shivambu is a strong speaker, but can he pull off the charm and the charisma of Jacob Zuma? Did you see the way that people were running after Jacob Zuma at the IEC Results Center? I was there. I posted that thing on social media. It was hilarious to watch. Journalists, all kinds of people just trying to get close to Zuma. Zuma has that effect. He has a crowd pull. He's a man of the people, well beloved in the townships, all over, in the rural areas. Does Floyd Shivambu have that strength? I don't think so. I really don't think so. This is not a knock on him. He's a strong speaker. He's a strong thinker. But I don't think he has some of the elements, the street elements, that are necessary to become a superstar politician. I really don't think that he has all of those ingredients as things stand now. I have never heard, and maybe you have, but I've never, and maybe you can ask around, ask your people, let's do some informal research. Anecdote is not good quality research, but let's talk to people around us today. You can come back to the comments, tell me what they said. I've never heard many people saying that they follow Floyd Shivambu. I've heard them say he provides key analysis and input, he's a good thinker, etc. I've never heard them say they follow him at the national level. He was a strong leader. He became SRC president and led in a variety of positions in various places. But people saying they follow Floyd to the point where you say we're going to go from 2.5 million to 3.5 or 5 or 10 million votes on Floyd Shivambu's ticket. I don't think he's the one to do that. I don't see it. Maybe you see it. Let's have a conversation about it, but I don't see it. I also want to say Floyd posted on Twitter that the move to MK was the most sound and solid decision. Sound relates to rationality of the decision. It speaks to logic. And for Floyd, that particularly, because these are the colors that he's put his identity next to, it speaks to Marxist, Leninist, Fanonian ideological school of thought. That is what Floyd has said he is, Marxist, Leninist, Fanonian. Floyd has said he would explain fully later, but I think he actually has an obligation to explain soon. This is a man who is an academic. He has a PhD. He can speak at length. He can write at length, and we've seen him. So why has he not typed out an explanation to show the logical and academic coherence of this decision? Because I don't think that it can truly be said at this particular point that the MK party is Marxist-Leninist Fanonian. They've said that they are progressive. Some people have challenged that and said, how progressive are you? Because there are many different things within the progressive school of thought, some of which have to do with internationalism. Some of them have to do with Pan-African scholarship and thinking. And if you look at some of the rhetoric, some people have said that, listen, MK seems to have been hostile to its African counterparts, the African migrant community, for example. So is it truly a progressive entity? Maybe that's unfair criticism. But I think that someone who says they're Marxist-Leninist Fanonian has to tell us, where exactly did you identify, as things stand right now, the Marxist-Leninist Fanonian ideological thought, leadership, or coherence within the MK party? If you are saying that it's the best decision, most sound decision, solid decision, explain why it's sound. You have to explain. I think that's the obligation that exists on Floyd, especially as an academic who has to provide other academics around the world, people that he is peers with and people that he has written for, etc., etc. You are saying this is sound. It can be just a political decision, but for you to take that position, you now have to defend that. Solid. It says sound and solid. Solid speaks to stability of the position. I think that Floyd has to reflect on current events within MK. For example, the fate of Jabulani Khumalo, the founder of the MK party. Are people going to trust Floyd Shivambu within the MK party? He just came from EFF. I don't think I would trust him. As an MK member from day one, I'd be like, this guy has been out for a very long time. He opposed Ubaba and all of these other things. How can I trust that he's going to come into this organization and actually be one of us in a true sense, right? Jabulani Khumalo thought he was stable. And now he's doing interviews on Biz News, complaining, saying, no, Ubaba, Tutu Zuma, etc., etc. You heard him. You saw what he was saying. Zuma is a master chess player. And it's difficult to say you are safe under him. It's difficult. You never know where you fit into the chess game. You see, Zuma plays many games of chess at the same time. You may think this board is the one that matters to him. Kanti, he's focused on this board. And you may think that you're a bishop, Kanti, you're a pawn. You may think that you're a rook, Kanti, you're a knight. He knows, but you may not know, and he may not tell you. Many people have lost positions which they had in cabinet when Zuma was the president. Some of them didn't think they were going to lose those positions. Many have lost positions in the MK recently. Some people who thought they were safe. So what I'm trying to say is that, saying that things are solid for you, coming into a brand new entity while you are the most brand new of the brand news. Even Jimmy Mzwanyele Manyi, he can be safer in that organization than Floyd Shivambu because he has actually been a Zuma guy from day one, up and down, and even when he was in EFF, he was still spokesperson for the Jacob Zuma Foundation. He at least has a closer relationship. I don't think that Floyd is as solid as he thinks within the MK party. The Nkandla tea remains a mystery. Maybe there's a tea that he knows that we don't know. Tea is being brewed and drank and all of these things. Was it a Ceylon tea? Was it a rooibos tea? Was it an Earl Grey? Was it a Wenawe Zulu tea? Maybe there's something that makes him think he's very stable. But what I would say, maybe from the tea, but what I would say is that the only person who is solid in the MK is Tutu. Tutu Zuma is the only solid one because she is Daddy's little girl. Wena, you're not Daddy's little girl. You're not Daddy's little girl. So I don't know. She's the safest one. She's the safest one. Look, here are some of my thoughts. Having looked at some of the commentary around this in the last few days, I think that Floyd felt that he was not going to win a challenge to his position as vice president in the upcoming EFF conference. There are people who are as talented as him in terms of academia. People who have PhDs. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi has got a PhD also. There are people who are as talented as him in terms of mobilization and organization. People who've come out of SRCs across different parts of South Africa, who organized and won SRC elections at UCT, all over the place. So he's no longer the only guy who knows how to get things done, right? And he has a big albatross in terms of performance. He failed to sustain the EFF growth and momentum in KZN. And there are going to be some people who will look at that and say that now that he has joined MK, maybe he actually did it on purpose as a form of sabotage. He worked with MK to remove the EFF as a factor in KwaZulu-Natal. I don't know. Time will tell. I don't know anything about that. But if we're looking at it from the EFF perspective, going to a conference, people are going to say, hey, Chief, other people maintain their bases. When you dropped, you lost 300,000 votes for us in KwaZulu-Natal, and we have to hold you accountable. How did you fail to keep our ideological stronghold together? How did we drop to all of these? How did we drop 300,000 votes under your direct supervision and leadership? So that was a big albatross for him going to conference. Ndlozi performed well. Other people who were leading campaigns in other provinces performed well. He underperformed, right? So the challenge to him as vice president was going to be real, and it was going to be something that I think was going to be credible within the organization. And I don't think there was going to be space for Julius to protect him that much, because the other thing is that he also has this big VBS scandal weighing over him. The biggest name, people asked me last time, why is VBS closer to Floyd than to Julius? Because the reporting was mostly about Floyd, that Polly did, right? The money went to Brian Shivambu, his brother. And his name has come up more than any other name. Of course, Matodzi did say, I met with Floyd and Julius, and this was the discussion. But it seems as if Floyd was the guy who was going to be responsible for this. So maybe he's taking a fall strategically for the EFF so that he can, be somewhere and have his needs taken care of, so that if this bullet hits, it hits him directly and not necessarily the EFF, the organization that he built, but I don't think that he was going to have upside within the EFF. He wasn't going to be able to challenge Julius Malema. Julius remains very popular within the EFF. He remains, I think, more talented at organizational leadership than Floyd. You can't go up. People are coming for your position of number 2. So now if you've been number 2 and you can't go up, what else are you left with? You got to go out, right? I think the best direction for him to go would be go out of the party. I think he could have tried to go into academia as opposed to maybe joining MK, but I doubt that he would have been able to find a job at a top university. Floyd Shivambu has been in many fights with vice chancellors of universities, and some of them would have been uncomfortable to take him on. He could have tried to go overseas, but that would have taken him out of SA politics altogether. But maybe that's something that he needed, a break from SA politics. Right now, even though we're doing all of the speculation, I don't think that Sunday Times has gotten to the heart of the story. Right now, I think what is needed is for Floyd Shivambu himself to do an interview and explain his side of the story as an academic, as a political strategist, as a political player. He has to go to a platform where someone can sit down with him and probe and examine. Sizwe Mpofu Walsh can do it. JJ Tabane can do it. There are so many platforms. Go to Sakina Kamwendo, have a conversation with her. Go to Clement Manyatela, have a conversation with him as well. He's going to probe you. If you want, come here. Let me do it. Let me do the probe. Let me shokoloza that thing so that we can check the probity and the plausibility and the intellectual coherence of your position. I don't know, guys. What do you think? What do you think? Let's have a conversation. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Subscribing is going to be free for the next 7 days, and then I'm going to extend it for the whole year. Free subscription on this YouTube. Mahala.com. Till the next one.